on success, unleashing the power of restaurant revenue management in the real world. Um, we are joined for this presentation, Mr. Puneet Rahindro. He's the founder and CEO of Rev Mantra. He will be giving us from his own experience and knowledge in this field some success stories, essential takeaways, and glimpse into the future of RRM. Thank you very much, Mr. Puneet, and over to you.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for being here and spending your time this afternoon, just before the coffee break. A little bit about myself. I run a consulting firm which provides strategic advisory as well as training and education for hospitality. I work with a variety of brands, independent restaurants and bars. I also own some of the world's 50 best restaurants and bars. And I tell you, my first restaurant was a disaster. I lost $250,000. A very expensive lesson to learn. And then fortunately after that, everything worked well, right? So I'm very passionate about this. It's not what I had ever imagined myself doing, but it's one of the passions that I have. So, you know, our business is about storytelling. So I'm going to tell you a few stories for non-believers that food and beverage revenue management can work, right? So I'm sure every group has a little bit of non-believers, a few skeptics, right? Yeah, it doesn't work, and so on and so forth, right? So I'll begin with a few stories. Okay, so the first one is 0.3 is equal to 25,688. Can anyone decipher the code? Yes?
If you increase 30 cents on the price of the, I don't know, menu or on this item, because you're selling, this much, you gain $25,000.
You want to do the presentation? Absolutely. By increasing the price of a menu item by 30 cents, the annual incremental impact of that was $25,688. Right, that's the first story. 360 is equal to 12,142. Can anyone decipher that? It's okay, there are no right or wrong answers. I mean, I know the right answer, but no harm trying. It's okay, we are all in the family, small group. Anyone? Okay, 360 minutes is the time spent on one-on-one server coaching. That resulted in $12,142 in incremental revenue. So that's the amount of time you spent, which costs nothing really, right? It's a job that you must do, but data-driven server performance coaching resulted in 12,142 in incremental revenue. Okay, here's another one. 22 is equal to 38,145. Anyone?
This is the meal period, serving period.
Very good. You are hitting very close, very close. So by improving your table and seat optimization on one single day, that is a Friday evening, you increased 22 covers, and that resulted in $38,145 in incremental revenue impact. Right? Okay. Here's another one, last one, I think. 5 is equal to 18,236. I'm sorry?
5-course menu.
No. Anybody else?
Highlighting your top 5.
Excellent. You guys should come and do a presentation, yes? Highlighting your top 5 items. Not just top 5 selling items, but also some items which were not selling as well, but very profitable. By doing that on the menu design, it resulted in $18,236 in incremental revenue. So by doing these 5 different stories, imagine if one restaurant done this, how much money they'd make? More than $120,000 annually, right? That is the impact of F&B revenue management, right? So for those who are non-believers, here's the last one, yeah? 5895 is equal to 72,556. What's the story?
Budget followers.
Excellent, reach, yes. Many times we sit and cry, you know, the business is not coming to my restaurant is running empty. So my question is, so what did you do to elevate that problem? And people don't think about restaurant and distribution the same way we think about guest rooms and distribution. You know, all the revenue guys are spending time on OTAs and third party and digital marketing. How much effort are we really spending on understanding the distribution landscape for a restaurant and then driving that part of the business? So over here, $5,895 is the spent on paid social, digital marketing, and that resulted in $72,556. It's very easy to measure these days because all your table management applications tell you the source from where the booking is coming. So every time you run a social media campaign or digital marketing campaign, it has a direct impact on how many bookings it ended up generating. And then if you've got the last mile, you can say, okay, my average check is so much, so many bookings came, so that's my incremental revenue. There you go, right? It's a pretty good return on investment. It's almost 11 to 1, which is a pretty good return on investment, right? So again, a great story, right? But I think I'm going to borrow here something from Sherry Kimes because F&B revenue management is very badly misunderstood, you know, because we don't do a good job clarifying what it takes, right? So Sherry, in one of the example, has drawn an analogy between a Swiss knife. So I've built on it further, so it's not my original idea. It's something I've borrowed a little bit from someone, and then based on my own knowledge, I kind of further worked on it, right? So let's divide a restaurant operation into 3 parts, right? The really busy period part, the okay part, average part, right? Or throughout the year, what you need to do, and then the really dead part, right? Or the cold periods. Now, the first thing we need to understand about food and beverage business is the same 3 parts can exist in one single day. So it's not the seasonality of hotel guest rooms where you have high season, low season, and all of that. In the same day, you can have high demand periods, you can have low demand periods, and periods that anyways need to be addressed through some strategies, okay? So first, let's focus on strategies which apply under all circumstances, right? The first one is server performance. So when I started opening my restaurant, you know, I came from a revenue management background. It was my first job opening a restaurant and running it, right? And I would ask questions, so, you know, how do I know which server contributes most towards my business? I want to reward that customer. And I would ask this question and my team would give me blank looks, right? What are you talking about? And then I started draining into data because I had a lot of time at my hand, right? I'm not serving tables, so I pulled out the data and started playing around with it. And I realized that we were doing a lot of training. They would have a menu test every week to see menu knowledge. They would do generic wine knowledge and all of that, right? But what wine knowledge will I teach someone who's a level 3 WSET graduate, which is a wine sommelier graduation level? I can't teach him anything about wine, but I can make sure the others who don't know about wine perhaps. But do we sell so much wine in the first place? Does it really make a difference to my average check? So we used a lot of data to understand what are the strengths and weaknesses of each server and how can we help them improve their average check, right? So we gave a very new dimension to the way coaching was being conducted, which became a one-on-one coaching with the servers, right? The second is about menu engineering and design, right? Someone spoke about don't have very large menus, have small, consistent menus, which is a fact. Today's day and age, you know, there is something we call the propagation of choice, right? It's like going to a supermarket, right? American supermarkets I can never get. Because if I go and buy, I want to buy cornflakes, I actually come back without buying anything. Because I'm so confused with so many choices that it overwhelms me, and I just say, okay, you know, I'll get my friend, my sister to buy it for me, right? Because I don't know what to buy. And the same thing happens with menu, right? The paradox of choice. The more choice you give is not necessarily the best conversion you have, or the best operational efficiency you can run, right? And therefore, menu design to begin with, and then menu engineering, understanding what's selling, what's driving profitability, and that drives variable pricing, that drives menu item pricing, the example I gave, that's very important, and that is a process that's ongoing. Whether you have high demand or low demand, that process is ongoing. The third is distribution. Right? You open an outlet, how do you create awareness?
18-minute
Right? So for example, so many outlets do happy hours, right? So yesterday I went to a hotel and I was on their rooftop bar and I asked for the menu and he gave me a standard menu. And then because I had done my research, I had gone on the website and checked out that outlet, I knew they'd do a happy hour, right? So I said, can I have a look at the happy hour? Are you still running? I said, yes, we are running till 8 o'clock, and they gave me a separate menu for happy hour, right? And I looked at that menu and I said, okay, you know, it's $39 dirhams for a drink. I said, that's a great choice. So I had a very nice mango spice Negroni, which I enjoyed, and I had a great time, right? And I paid 39 dirhams, which is a great steal in Dubai, right? Otherwise, the drinks are 60, 70 dirhams, right? So distribution is so important. I was aware, even though the staff didn't do a good job, but the digital team did a good job because they were amplifying it. It was on their Instagram feed, it was on their website, it was on Google, and Google has a section called Deals, so if you click on Deals, you can see what's happening, so they did a good job of it. And as a result, I benefited out of it as a customer. So even though one aspect of the service cycle broke, the distribution aspect took care of it, right? And that's one of the things. The other aspects are, during high demand periods, what can you do? Table seat optimization, right? Someone was talking just before I came, oh, in Dubai, you know, Palm Side hotels have started this entire thing of 2 seatings, 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock, right? And someone was saying in the Japanese restaurant, they have that kind of thing. You know, the idea is to optimize the spend and manage their table seating in a different way. I don't agree with that. And my biggest criticism is of restaurants in Singapore. You go onto their online booking platform, I never get a table. I walk into the restaurant, I have 10 tables available, right? What is the reason for that? Is this 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock sitting without understanding that the average meal duration in a restaurant is variable. Some customers will sit for 2.5 hours and eat their meal, but someone who's as impatient as me and wants to move to the next venue. Yesterday I jumped 4 venues in Dubai. Seriously, because I wanted to see it all, right? Because it's my enthusiasm to observe new places, what's happening, what's new, what's cooking. You know, is there any inspiration I can derive from that, right? So I want to jump, right? So I basically stayed for a meal in this restaurant where it's hard to get table. It's called Above 11 at the Marriott. You know, it's, I stayed for an hour, whereas the average meal duration perhaps is about 90 minutes or a little more than that, 100 minutes. So table seat optimization work, and that's where the example came Friday evenings, 22 covers more, resulted in additional revenue, right? Then is premium pricing. COP28 is going on. I don't see any difference in the menu anywhere. I've been to so many restaurants, I didn't see a single difference in menu. It's such a huge opportunity. If nothing else, for your social media, it's a huge opportunity. For your distribution, it's a huge opportunity that you celebrate environment. You say this week, our chef has created a separate sustainable menu and you price that menu differently, right? And you promote that and say, today we are only using organic fresh produce. We are only using produce from UAE, for instance, right? So a whole lot of those things could have been done, but unfortunately lost opportunity, right? So that's the thing. The other is during low demand, what do you do? Promotion and events. I ask people, okay, what are you going to do during this low demand period? You know, everyone knows 10th to the 23rd in Singapore's dead, right? On the other hand, during Ramadan, you know, some restaurants are dead. And I have an example of a restaurant in Egypt, which actually created a crazy demand for their restaurant. What did they do? They invited people for their iftar, media, to experience what the iftar would be like, right? They had queues. They were sold out for days and days. So they approached that event, creating the right awareness, getting the right media, pricing it correctly, sizing it correctly, and they had a sellout on their iftars, right? Fantastic example, right? So promotion and events. And then discounts and special offers, right? How many people do you think check in and check out of this hotel every day? And how many do you think actually consume food and beverage in the hotel? Right? No one even calculates, to be honest, right? If I'm an independent restaurant operator. If some hotel tells me, run, get your restaurant in my hotel, I'll jump with joy because suddenly I'm thinking I've got these 100,000 customers annually who are checking in, checking out. Even if I get 20% of that in my outlet, wow. You know, I still remember I used to be a management trainee at the Taj Mahal Hotel and Palace, right? I never understood this. At that time there was no internet and all that, right? That tells you my age also. And you know, I would see all the restaurant managers standing outside in the lobby, and I said, what is this nonsense? They shouldn't be inside looking after their customers. You know what were they doing? They were catching hold of customers in the lobby and bringing them into their restaurants. Yeah. Because they had a budget to make, and that was sacrilege. Not making your budget. It was it was actually sanctified, right? If you didn't make the budget, there was a serious trouble because the CEO of the company used to sit in the hotel, right? And a very crazy CEO, right? Tarandeep is laughing because he knows who I'm talking about. So that's what they did. And it took me a time to figure out they're stealing customers from each other and trying to impress upon them and bringing them. So they were driving demand. I wish that passion exists today in restaurant leaders. That they do the same, stand in the lobby, meet customers, talk about their promotions, their new food, some chef, something has come, bring the chef out into the lobby, right? So that works. It works very well, but you need to be able to promote it. All we do is put a tent card in the room, right? Maybe put something on the elevator stuff, which also passes off really quickly. It's a powerful tool, don't get me wrong. I've got great stories about looking at elevator ads which come. If they're done very nicely and they're not like illegible, then it has a huge impact, right? And then targeted marketing, you know. If I ask the F&B guys, do you invest in CRM technologies and so on? The answer is no. Why not? If guest rooms does that, why can't F&B do that? On an average, each hotel has 4 restaurants. So why can't you do that, right? So these are some great examples, and one of the things which people raise with me is data and availability of data, right? And on your fingertips. Today, data is easily available. There are enough tools out there, including one of my startups, right? There are enough tools which can give you easy access to data that helps you drive menus. I don't know what happened. Is that a message for me to get out? Anyways, while we are figuring this out and big data has come up, I don't know. So there are various ways that you can get information about your menu engineering. You can get various information about how you can drive server performance. You can get information about your forecasted seat and table occupancy, which is forward-looking data and not backward-looking by the time period, and it gives you a heat map of what you need to do, right? And I spoke about in my previous plenary session about Fatprints, one of my restaurants, where application of variable pricing has been successful, and you can see there is $29 lunch menu, there's $69 and $55 brunch set, and then there's a la carte meal. So that's a great example of applying variable pricing in 3 separate menus, right? One of the biggest problems in food and beverages, we are always looking at past data. What's the point doing post-mortem when you've got the future ahead of you? So you should be forward-looking and looking at your data up ahead, and based on that, planning your strategies. And last but not the least, in the last 1 minute of my session, all I want to talk about, and I want to leave this thought with you. The distribution landscape for restaurants and bars is as complex and as complicated today as the guest room distribution infrastructure is. If you do not recognize that firstly to begin with, believe you me, you will always be crying about empty tables and empty seats in your restaurants, right? And that is something that I would like you to take away, right? So I put down some points. I think these are going to be available to you after this session. Some takeaways, learn the basics, and Tarandeep, you'd asked me this question. So I kind of had already preempted the question you asked, so I kind of put it down in writing for everyone to kind of understand. Start small, enough technology available, don't worry about data, it's not a problem anymore. And that's that. And please check into the QR code so we know how many people checked into the session, so Ula invites me even next year to do the session.
I have
Sorry,
to say one
Mona,
of the most,
not Ula. Mona
interesting
invites me.
sessions for today, I think, one of the most interesting sessions. We don't focus, we were having a chat before the presentation saying we don't spend much time in analyzing food and beverage numbers and strategies, and I think we all should be doing a better job in that. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Khalid. Any questions before we wrap? Oh my God,
Oh,
okay.
wow.
Okay, we have enough time, we have, because next is coffee break, so I
Slide
think you had enough coffee
14.
for today.
Yeah.
Sorry, can we put slide 14 up? The gentleman has a question on that.
I just want to see
The distribution, he wants to click the photograph.
Yeah, also.
Yes,
Yeah, so you've got automated RMS and analytics, which is the systems that are available. There are quite a few. There are a few of us floating around also in this conference, right? So you can catch hold of one of us or one of my colleagues. The POS system is no longer a problem. They're all very many, but they all have their pros and cons. There's stable management systems. You have your CRM loyalty platform if you're using that, and they're all very cheap today. There was a time, you know, as an independent, my cost on technology is never more than $1,000 a month to $1,200 a month. And I recover that cost very easily, no problems. With one table, I recover that cost, right? No issues.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about, you mentioned we should look at the future more
Yes.
than the past. And with the lead time, sometimes very last minute,
Mhm.
the same day, it's not like the rooms, you can see the pace in the future. I mean, what's the, what actually you look at in future data if it does not exist?
It's a great question. So one of the differences between guest rooms and food and beverage forecasting is that in guest rooms you have business on books, and the infatuation of hoteliers with pace. But I'm glad you talked about lead time, because that's more important than pace. In food and beverage, I can talk about how we do the forecasting in an automated manner. Right? We look at the most recent trends, and then we look at if there is any special event. For example, everyone thought that when Coldplay plays in Singapore, there's so many people coming and it's going to be sold out and restaurants are going to be full. What happens? Empty restaurants. So we profile several such events to say, okay, what was the impact of a concert in the city? What was the impact of a sporting event in the city, and so on? Did it have a positive rub-off or a negative rub-off? So automatically that overlays on top of that, right? In the future, we are going to ingest a lot more third-party data because it's very valuable. But right now, what we do is we look at more recent trends, and then based on that, we superimpose. So we don't look at last year, because what happened last year in food and beverage is really old data. What happened in the past 3 months and what's likely to happen in the next few months is important. Someone asked me an important question, because when we design our tools, we were very focused on independence, and in hotel business also your occupancy and what your conversion is from your occupancy into the covers in the outlet is also extremely important, right? So if you can overlay that, it's fantastic. One of Ula's hotel does it manually, and they do a bloody good job of it. Very, very good job of it. I'm very, very proud of that hotel.
I agree with you. I mean, sometimes in the marketing for that would be, really sometimes we find out the restaurant is more cheaper than independent restaurant, and still that restaurant is one of this restaurant.
Yeah, the reason is because someone spoke about the positioning. When we as an independence open restaurant, we spend a lot of time doing market research. For example, in a heavily Middle Eastern area, for instance, I would open a beautiful Japanese restaurant because they want something different, and that's the need of the market, right? I would open another Middle Eastern restaurant over there because then I'm competing with 30 others, right? But if I create a unique personality, I'm sure, I'm going to attract people. I may not have so much of regular visitation on a daily basis, but at least once a month if the guy comes back, it's good for me, right? So things like that, you have to really research your market. And in a lot of hotels, you design a place for breakfast and then think, oh my lord, I've got to sell this for lunch and dinner also. So what do? You load them with buffets. There are only 2 or 3 hotels where they were very smart. They said, you know what, if I'm high on demand, I'll open a second menu to serve breakfast. But I can't have a 200 cover restaurant sitting, which I can't sell for lunch and dinner. I can only sell 60 covers. Very successful food and beverage operation, and they open an alternate dining facility during high periods.
Puneet, 2 questions really. So one is you highlighted the importance of distribution in F&B or in restaurants, and also the importance of premium pricing and dropping your pricing. Where do you see dynamic pricing fitting into these things?
I
know
choose,
Salon's gonna
yeah,
laugh.
I choose not to use the word dynamic pricing for restaurants. I choose to use the word variable pricing. You can vary your pricing, depend again on the nature of the outlet. So in my earlier session I said, if you're a stock exchange bar, you can change it every 30 minutes if you like, right? It goes well with that concept. If you're a fine dining Japanese omakase restaurant, your choice of varying prices is only by lunch and dinner. I'll give you a good example, you know. A friend of mine was in Japan, wanted to go to a restaurant, cursed me because it cost $350 to have dinner over there, US dollars, right? Set menu. I said, are you stupid? I told you go for lunch. Because you know what is the price for lunch? $71. The reason for that is that a lot of restaurants have realized they don't have so much of lunch traffic. And also people don't want to spend too much time, right? So you have to understand how much is your clientele willing to pay for lunch. And then you design a menu around that, saying, if during lunch I make enough to pay my salaries and wages and rent and utility bill, whatever I do in dinner is free. I'm taking that to the bank, right? Because my fixed cost is, and this is a high fixed cost business, right? In hotels you don't feel that because no one charges you rent, right? But independents we feel because we are charged rent, right? We have to pay, rent is almost 15-20% of the cost of running a restaurant. So you're even more at advantage than independents. So sometimes I take a look at the pricing and I ask the guys, you know, I get this burger for $15 across the street, why am I paying 35? Yeah, but you're in a 5-star hotel. Did you choose any separate beef? Are you using Kobe special? No. Then what justifies you charging $35? If your quality is not superior and your uniqueness is not there, then there is no point pricing it any different, because the independents, some independents are better than your free restaurants housed in hotels.
Thank you for that. The other question is around, you mentioned about market research, right? So fundamentally for a hotel, a concept is laid down at the design stage, which is 5 years before the hotels actually come into life. So where do you see hotels to actually plan the concept of F&B?
I mean, I'm a big fan of one company that is in Ismore, right? And they just opened the Mondrian in Singapore, right? They've got 22 outlets in the vicinity, right? So some space is outsourced, but they've been very smart. They've got one great Japanese, they've got fantastic Spanish, which automatically comes from a chef who runs one of the most happening Spanish restaurants in Singapore. They've got 2 or 3 different bars, but all very different. One is speakeasy style, one is jazz and cigars, right? And then in the hotel, they've got like 3 or 4 different very nice outlets, like a fantastic steakhouse and all that, right? Now, they researched the market and they saw what is in the vicinity, and they're in heart of Chinatown. So Chinatown is full of some of the best restaurants. You're competing against the best of the best, right? In 10-minute walk near my bar, there are at least 10 top 50 restaurants in the world, not even in Asia, right? So they're operating in that environment. So they researched the market well, and to be honest, they sized what kind of restaurants they want at the design stage, right? At the concept stage. We are not going to have more than 60 covers. We're not going to have, this is what we want. The concepts were done much closer to the opening, seeing what's the latest in the market and all that. Yeah. Very cool success story, actually. It's a great case study.
we are very, like a resort property, very dependent on occupancy. Now we've seen huge fluctuations in guest in-house capture ratio. So we've gone from guest almost 70-60% in-house capture to literally dropping down to 20 on some days. And it's been fluctuating quite consistently. So then the challenge is if I go and sell it outside, like a non-residential strategy, then your in-house guests tend to have an issue saying that I've come to your restaurant, I'm staying in your resort, and I don't have, you're not catering to me. And then if they hold the seats for their in-house guests and then they don't come, it's like you're lose-lose.
Excellent question. Is it an all, do you do a lot of all-inclusive packages? Okay, great.
Maybe half board, but not all.
Okay, half board also means one meal is killed. Okay, so you have to be a little strategic about it. I don't know how many outlets you have, so I'll have to take a look at your data. You know, and we always say, in God we trust, rest all come with data. Right? So I have to take a look at your data to be able to give you better insights. But typically with resorts, what I see, and I see it a lot in Maldives also, right? They don't operate all their outlets on everyday basis. They strategize it, right? I've seen that with some resorty places in Baham, also with some hotels, where all the outlets are not open every day. So they're very smart. The second thing is that for certain outlets, they don't allow those packages. They say, sure, you can, if you're on a package, you can go, but you'll have to pay a top-up premium of 50 bucks more or 70 dirhams more to enjoy that experience, right? Because some of these hotels also have a Michelin star or Michelin recognized restaurant, which are popular, right? So that's how they create a balance. But to be able to give you a more specific answer, like I said, in God we trust, rest all come with data.
Thank you. It's indeed really one of the best sessions of
Thank you.
Sunday. I have so many questions to ask you myself, but
I'll be around today and tomorrow. Feel free to catch hold of me, and I love talking. So, and I'm full of answers.
We'll be sharing the presentations as well by the end of the event, so you can have it on a later stage. Last question, anyone? Amazing. So we will
Fantastic.
go
Thank you.
to the
Thank you very much.